Welcome everyone to Mamados Medical Media, a free online YouTube channel, weekly posting new medical videos. Join our Facebook and Telegram groups for more interaction and latest news. You could also support the channel on Patreon, where we upload multiple choice questions and other premium content. Thanks in advance.
Hi everyone. Our previous videos were an introductory videos to the Central Nervous System chapter. This is the second chapter of the Central Nervous System, and this chapter is about the sensory system. So what do we mean by sensory system? The sensory system is the system that detects various forms of energy, transforming the received form of energy into an electrical signals, transmitting these electrical signals to the sensory cortex in the brain. Then the brain encodes these electrical signals into a sensation and a feeling. Some sensations reach our consciousness and some others don't reach our consciousness. Stimulation of the sensory system could come from the external environment or from within our body, the internal environment. After sensory encoding from the brain, a sensory effect happens, which means that emotional reaction is triggered after sensation. It could be a pleasant feeling, for example, eating an ice cream will trigger a pleasant sensory effect, while having a headache triggers an unpleasant sensory effect. And now let's look at the components of the sensory system. The sensory system contains sensory receptors that detects a certain form of energy and transform this energy into an electrical energy. Afferent fibers transmitting electrical signals through a pathway or a tract. Then these electrical signals reaches the somatosensory cortex, which encodes the received signals as follows. The type of sensation perceived, it's called the modality of sensation. For example, touch is a modality of sensation. Site of stimulation or locality, strength of the stimulus or the intensity of the stimulus, and the duration of the stimulus. For how long was the receptor stimulated? In this video, we look at the sensory receptors. So sensory receptors are attached to the ends of afferent fibers. They convert a form of energy received into an electrical signals. Now, before going into classifications of receptors, let's look at some properties shared by the sensory receptors. First, we have the adequate stimulus, meaning that receptors are most sensitive for specific type of stimulus and less or not sensitive for other types of stimulus. For example, if this was a mechanoreceptor, then it will be more sensitive to mechanical energy, but not sensitive for electromagnetic energy. Note that pain sensation is triggered by any form of energy or situation that could result in tissue injury, so it doesn't have an adequate stimulus. Second feature of the sensory receptors is the excitability. Receptors receive a form of energy, then transform it into a type of local potential, also known as the generator potential or the receptor potential. This electrical potential could be triggered by sodium influx, for example, to the receptor membrane, or calcium influx. It might be due to potassium efflux or deactivation of sodium-potassium ATPase pump, whatever results in a positive charge inside the membrane of the receptor. Just like other types of local potentials, it is a partial subthreshold depolarization. It is localized to the area around the receptor. It is graded according to the strength of the stimulus, and summation is possible in the generator potential. When reaching the threshold potential, an action potential will be triggered on the afferent nerve fiber, then conducted through the axons till reaching the sensory areas. Sensory receptors has a feature called desensitization or adaptation. This happens when there is a sustained stimulation to the receptor with constant strength, which results by time in lowering the frequency of action potential conducted by the afferent nerve. It happens because the receptor readjusts itself, entering a sleep state, or the afferent fibers accommodate by deactivating sodium channels, preventing electrical conduction. So that's it for the properties of the receptors. Now let's move on to the different classifications of receptors. Starting with the traditional old classification, in the past they used to divide sensory receptors into cutaneous receptors that detects sensations of touch, pressure, vibration, temperature, and pain. So whatever touches the skin are regarded as cutaneous receptors. Then visceral receptors detecting pain and signals of organic distension from the organs of the body. The vagus nerve is responsible for most of the visceral sensations. Then we have a special senses receptors like the taste buds detecting sensation for taste, hair cells detecting sensation for smell, photoreceptors detecting sensations for vision, organ of Corti for hearing, and otolithic organs for rotational and linear body acceleration, or body balance in other words. Receptors are classified according to the source of the stimulation into Tele Receptors. Tele means from distance, like telephone. So Tele Receptors are the receptors detecting stimuli from a distance. Examples of Tele Receptors are the photoreceptors detecting electromagnetic waves, organ of Corti for detecting sound waves, hair cells detecting different chemicals for smell sensation. Then we have exteroceptors, meaning that it is a receptors detecting the environment surrounding the body, like receptors for taste, touch, pressure, vibration, and temperature. Other type of receptors are the interoceptors, detecting the internal environment of the body. Examples of interoceptors: we have baroreceptors detecting changes in blood pressure, and we have chemoreceptors detecting changes in hydrogen ion, carbon dioxide, and oxygen partial pressure. We also have osmoreceptors for osmoregulation and fluid balance, and thermoreceptors for measuring the internal core body temperature. We have another type of receptors called the proprioceptors, and these are receptors found in the muscles, tendons, ligaments, and the skin. They enable the body to perceive its own position on space, so they detect the muscle movement, stretching of the skin, and acceleration of the body. Vestibular body in the inner ear, visual sensations, and also the cerebellum, all of these help in creating a body map in the somatosensory area of the cortex. Then we have nociceptors, and nocio is a Latin word, means injury or to injure. So these are pain receptors, stimulated by any form of energy or situation that results in a tissue damage. Receptors are also classified according to the form of energy that they are most sensitive to. So for example, when we say mechanoreceptors, we mean the receptors that are stimulated by mechanical energy. When we say thermoreceptors, we mean the receptors that are stimulated by thermal energy. And when we say chemoreceptors, we mean the receptors that are stimulated by any form of chemical changes, like the central chemoreceptors that detects changes in hydrogen ion, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. Receptors for smell and taste, also regarded as chemoreceptors. Then we have baroreceptors, and these are stimulated by the arterial pressure. Nosioreceptors, stimulated by tissue injury. Photoreceptors are stimulated by electromagnetic photons. Osmoreceptors by fluid electrolytes imbalance, and the list goes on. There is another way of classifying receptors according to the degree of adaptation. So we have a rapidly adapting receptors, a slowly adapting receptors, intermediately adapting receptors, and non-adaptive receptors. Examples for rapid adaptive receptors are the receptors of touch. Slow adaptive receptors are like the receptors for pressure, the proprioceptors, and the baroreceptors. Intermediately adapting receptors are the receptors for temperature. Non-adaptive receptors are the nosioceptors, the receptors of pain, because pain is a protective mechanism. Last but not least, receptors are classified according to their structure. So for example, we have a free nerve endings, and these are the receptors for pain and temperature, which means the receptor is the terminal part of the nerve. Then we have encapsulated receptors. For example, we have the Pacinian corpuscle. Corpuscle means the body, and these are receptors for touch. We have the Meissner's corpuscle, and these are receptors most sensitive to vibration, but they are also touch receptors. Then we have expanded tip receptors, and these are like the Merkel's disc, which are receptors for pressure, and pressure is the sustained touch. So the pressure is perceived by Merkel's disc. Also we have the Ruffini endings, and these are proprioceptors found in the skin. We also have sense organs, and sense organs are receptors attached to a neural cell and non-neural epithelium. And these are the special senses: the organ of Corti, the retina of the eye, the otolithic organ in the vestibule, the hair cells in the nasal cavity, and the taste buds in the tongue. So guys, that's it for this video. In our next video we will go into different somatosensory tracts. So until then, see you in the next video.